So cannabis is another plant-derived source of drugs, and that's one of the interesting things about actually cannabis is how there's a multitude of psychoactive chemicals that are found in that plant, and there's a lot of variability then, depending on the strain or the type of plant that you're deriving the the experience from. Cannabis is also a particularly interesting drug in American culture because, of course, it is a Schedule One substance, which means, according to the law, that it has no therapeutic or kind of clinical utility. Meanwhile, of course, there is another massive arm of the federal government, the NIH, which has been funding studies that show that cannabis has, significant, or the drugs, the chemicals found in cannabis, cannabinoids, have significant utility in terms of treating pain, and also nausea, and now epilepsy, and now a host of other significant medical concerns. So there's a lot more going on here, and actually, interestingly, in terms of the history of the regulation of cannabis, we'll talk a little bit about Harry Anslinger, who's the first U.S. Commissioner of Narcotics, who basically targeted cannabis, pretty specifically, because of his racist, biases. And what's interesting is the American Medical Association, at the time vigorously opposed, this Tax Stamp Act, which made it illegal, to cultivate or to sell or distribute or prescribe, marijuana, which was the term that Anslinger decided to use. But they vigorously opposed it, and a lot of their members were not even aware that their access to cannabis as a therapeutic was going to be impeded by this act, because they called it cannabis, and its medicinal properties were pretty well recognized. So there have always been sort of powerful forces arrayed against this particular source of psychoactive chemicals, even though this is a drug that does not have any of the toxicity, the lethality that's associated with, for example, opioids or the amphetamines, methamphetamine, or nicotine. Many of these are legal, or there's big pharmaceutical interests behind their prescription. So this, I think, is going to be an interesting discussion of where the compounds that are known as cannabinoids that are found in cannabis actually act in the brain and body, and what are the sort of resulting effects, and what has the research shown up until this point anyway. There's a lot more that needs to be done, obviously, to elucidate the both the actions and effects of some very complicated mixes of psychoactive